Today, we're going to be talking about making perfectly square cuts using a drywall square, a track saw, and a track. The first thing I'm going to do is make sure that this chunky old base is square itself, and that's by measuring diagonally. Now this 1.5 inch thick 8 foot by 3 foot slab I had laying around the shop, I'm going to dimension it down, adding 3/4 inch overhang all the way around, which is 1.5 inch total, larger width and length. Now the reason I use a drywall square is if they're not damaged or they're in good condition, they provide a phenomenal reference point and stopping edge for a Festool track. The other reason is it's a nice 4-foot line as opposed to just using a small speed square. Now your first two cuts are going to be referenced off of the exact same edge. So when you're flipping this thing around, make sure that the first edge that you ran your drywall square on is the same edge for your second cut. This will give you two perfectly parallel cuts to each other, assuming you properly position the fence against the drywall square. Now this dimensional cut is final for me on the length, so I take my time bumping the fence up against the drywall square until it's right on my pencil line. I then make two cuts, two different plunges because it's 1.5 inches thick, and this Makita track saw likes to make two cuts. Now that you have two parallel lines that are cut, I'm going to do the exact same thing except perpendicular. So my drywall square will now go on the end, and I'll make my rip on the table. And the goal here is to reference the exact same edge for both cuts. So I'm merely going to roll the table over and keep the blue drywall square on the same section of end grain so as to make a perfectly parallel line for both of my cuts here. That means I've only had to reference two sides, not four, to get 4 cuts. Making sure that my dimension is final, I'm going to shimmy in position this track up against the drywall square, make sure that it's nice and tight, and go ahead and make my plunge cuts for a successful final cut. At this stage in the game, hopefully nothing moves in that second cut and you're left with something that is perfectly square. Once you remove the material, the best way to check if you are square is measuring diagonally, never just width and length. Always pull tape across to check it, and you should be left with something that is perfectly square in reference to your project. Now obviously if you have an out of square project you're trying to make a cut for with even overhang, you got to do some funky stuff. But this is for getting a perfectly square cut without the use of a table saw, simply using a track saw and a Festool track system in combination with a 4-foot drywall square. If you guys have any questions, let me know. Feel free to ask in the comments below. And if you like what you're seeing, please considering giving us a thumbs up and subscribing. Take care.